Hey, welcome back to the show. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Arif and Jeff Gerard on your place for news, talk, and information. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Okay, your family's finances. If you have a large enough family, I mean, 4, 5, 6 aunts, uncles, siblings, you start getting into the numbers and the averages and the ratios where people are going to be impacted by domestic violence. Statistically, remember, the organization that puts out statistics is the one that has those statistics to benefit themselves. Don't be surprised, right? You follow me on that? American Cancer Society says, 1 out of 10 people, well, it's the American Cancer Society, so you understand it. And then they'll use little words like impacts. 1 out of 4 women will be impacted by domestic violence. When you hear the word impact, you think victim. They know that. They're not dumb. They put that word out on purpose. Instead of saying 1 out of 4 people, women will know somebody or have a friend who knows somebody or will be impacted by other people, right? Instead of making it what it kind of is, instead of saying 1 out of 4 people. Follow me? So just take those statistics with a grain of salt. You'll see that across the board. Anyway, even saying that, the numbers are that 1 out of 4, even if we say 1 out of 10 women, will be a victim and or know somebody that's a victim or have a friend that is a victim of domestic violence. That is important because that means there are people that know and that should be taking action, that should be getting involved, that should be stepping up and saying, understand, guys, there is a solution. There are some options. Jeff, you covered it a little bit earlier, but it's worth repeating again about being involved in the finances on a regular basis.
Well, and that's a big deal because a lot of this is preventative. You have to take a look and see, am I in a position where I might be left vulnerable in the case where, let's say, a marriage does go sideways or a relationship does go sideways and it becomes a violent one and you have to take some action and separate and get involved in a way that you never had to before. I think getting involved early on is really the key. That's the place where you go and say, I'm not going to be completely a victim. Sure, this bad thing is happening to me, but I'm not left without any money. I'm not left with, locked out of my credit cards, as you alluded to earlier, Arif. I mean, the spouse that controls the money typically has a lot more say in the household. We've found, at least, and I'm not saying that that's the way it should be, but it happens to be that's that place of power or the place of decision making. And if you have access to all of the finances, there are ways to get around signatures and authorization to where if you wanted to cut somebody out and be real nasty, you could, especially out of spite. And we've seen that too many times. So get involved early on if you're the spouse. Know that you have a contribution to the family. I love that you've brought this up, Arif. Everybody has a place in the family. Everybody has a contribution. Everybody's part of the family when there's a family. Right? You all have a job to do and you all make a contribution. Maybe and traditionally dad goes out and earns money and maybe mom cooks dinner that night. But let's switch the roles. Could dad, cook a 4-course meal? Probably not. I know I don't even get near the stove if I don't have to. And would my wife be able to come to my job and do my job even half as good as I do? I don't know. Maybe better. I don't know that. But certainly there'd be a learning curve on either side. And you have to remember that even though you don't bring in dollars, you still have a contribution to that marriage, to that family, to that household. So don't dismiss that. And I've seen people do that. So just because there's no dollar figure attached to that, because you don't get a paycheck or an hourly wage, doesn't mean that there's not a valuable contribution. So be involved, at least to the degree that you know where things are financially speaking.
And I want to give you a resource. I don't necessarily know or want you to invest or give them money or what's it called, donate to them. But I do want you to use their resources. And the reason I say I don't want you to necessarily donate to them is because I don't know their good stewardship source of decisions. In other words, I don't know if they're doing the right thing with the money just yet. I'm not yes or no on it. I have to research that. However, do I like the resources on it? Yes. purplepurse.com. It's an Allstate Insurance sponsored website. It's called purplepurse.com. Tennis star Serena Williams is behind it. She's involved with the awareness She's expecting her first child, so she's taken time off the tennis court. I like that. And is getting involved in a lot of causes. And one of those specifically is the domestic violence issue and getting it out so people make, on the financial side especially, can make decisions. Look, today the resources are there. It's very difficult to have somebody locked up at home like this guy used to have, the paramedic guy used to have his wife, right? She was locked up at home. Difficult today with cell phones, with Wi-Fi and the ability to call Uber and Lyft and get those services, and all of that kind of changes the dynamic a little bit of being able to still keep somebody at home. However, it is not impossible. And it can even happen in the middle of a big city, let alone in a remote place in the middle of Kern County or something. So this is a very important part to your life, is to know that there are resources. Because maybe you're not the one who is a victim of this. Maybe you're not the one who's impacted by this. But the truth is, if you don't know somebody, you know somebody that does. And that is a big deal when you are the one who people come to. Look, you don't have to have all the answers. Just know where to find them. My sister's an attorney, and I remember when she was studying in law school, and she was just a bear to be around, studying for the bar and the different exams and all the baloney she went through, and just not a nice person to be around during those finals, and just, very grumpy, and we just kind of did what we could to help her or leave her alone, whatever we could do.
Understandably, yeah.
But through that process at the end, I said, gosh, you had to memorize all of that stuff. No wonder it was so crazy. She said, no. Things went a lot easier when I learned that all I had to do was learn how to research, learn how to find it. Now, today with the whole search engine world, you don't really even need, those sets of books on the walls where you had to figure out what book it could be in and what part of that book. And today, it's type it into a search engine and you can get anything about anything. That is the same thing with getting help. You don't have to know exactly what to do next. Just know that there is something that you can do next. Financial pressures come in all of our lives. So people are going to make mistakes. Jeff, you and I have been under different financial pressures over the years. I know this because you're a friend and you're a guy that I trust and respect greatly.
Thank you.
And over the years, we've had ups and downs, both of us, when it's a tough day or a tough month or year or financially speak. Got it. However, there's a line that you don't cross. So ladies, understand this. If the guy is a jerk beyond a normal part of life, right? Understand that that's a character problem, not
right.
a situation problem.
That's right.
He would only be if this didn't happen. He would not be doing that if this... That's not always the case, ladies.
But that's the writing on the wall that we talk about, and I think part of it comes in the form of denial or excusing, or he's not always like that. You touched on it's only only if, but if you don't identify that, that could be a character flaw or a flaw in them. Arif, you just told a story recently on a recent show that someone actually got divorced, and one of the reasons they said was that the other person was not a nice person. And they chased people away, and they made it a very uncomfortable situation everywhere they went. And how many years does someone have to endure that before it escalates to the next level? So I think someone taking the proactive approach and saying, look, we're just not getting along anymore, before this escalates or goes to a much more serious situation, they separated, or at least they started the conversation. So it comes in all forms.
And you do not have to tolerate physical, emotional, financial, mental abuse. You also have to, learn the lines. There's this whole hypersensitivity about, safe spaces and microaggressions and what is it? Appropriation of what is it? Not class, but cultural appropriation, where, white privilege, you got to apologize for what? I don't know, but just apologize. This whole craziness that in 5 or 10 years, I pray anyway, 5 or 10 years, you're going to look back and say that was a bunch of hooey that was happening at that crazy time. However, there's still some reality, right? Even though there might be some craziness on one side, there is some reality still. And so there is an appropriate place for you to be sensitive to somebody who lacks credibility with others in their community, and they might go down the road to drink or to do drugs to gain acceptance. Well, that's a short road to abuse, neglect, and eventually financial isolation. So we want to keep you from being part of that financial isolation by you now beginning today to make a commitment, to take a step, to gain knowledge about basic financial matters. And I'm going to give you 5 places I want you to break it down into. 5 simple places. Number 1, you need to understand the insurance world.
Yep.
Car insurance, life insurance, health insurance, very basic. Okay, you need to understand insurance. Your family isn't going to teach you because everybody thinks everybody else knows. It's why they don't teach it in high school. If they did teach it in high school,
right,
everybody else would be in a place where there's a value and acceptance. Number 2, the basic world of what we call safe money. Now, what is safe money? That is checking, savings, CDs, annuities. The checking, savings, CDs, annuities, that's the place for emergencies, right? Your family needs to know that that's available. You need to know, hey, if I have an emergency, if I have to fix the tires on my car, if I have to get to work, I have those dollars with me now. I can get them today. And the third place, which is pretty important, is retirement and investments in the different retirement accounts.
Well, and that's a big deal too, because saving for the future is part of paying yourself. Because if you're going to work and spending everything that you have, you do that for a decade or 2 or 3, that's the financial habit that you've built for yourself. And if you have nothing when you get to retirement, surprise, there's no magic time in your life where you can just say, okay, I want to retire because I feel like it. You'll be working forever if that's the case. So paying yourself first, making retirement part of that conversation, and knowing that it should be, not that somebody else is taking care of it for you, but that you are. That's that conscious decision that's going to have to happen on your part. So make that one of the 5 points here.
Yes, and each one, and there's different accounts in the retirement world to understand as well.
That's right. So if you are a spouse that stays home or doesn't work and doesn't have a 401k, which that's kind of like the loose term for a workplace retirement account, you can save and invest in an individual retirement account. And that's a place where you can put money. It doesn't have to be at risk. It can be a bank CD. It can be a savings account. It can be an annuity. It can be in a place where you don't have to worry about it not being there, provided the institution is trustworthy and is sound and solid. Let's say that that's the baseline there, but you find one that you trust and you can put that money there. Now that's money that you know is going to be there in the future. And then you can break that up into 2 different places. You can have a Roth or a traditional, and that means it's either pre-tax where you get a benefit going in, or the post-tax where you get the benefit on taxes later. So sit with your financial professional, talk about that, but there's a couple different options there.
Next is going to be buying or leasing a car. Transportation has become literally a necessity and a requirement to live. Now, it's funny how, depending on where you live, that transportation can be part of your life and built around public transportation. Nothing wrong with that. So we're going to take a quick break because I want to be able to get into transportation a little bit deeper, because I'm going to tell you a little story about what we did with some Boy Scouts, and I think it'll fascinate you because it did myself, and I was involved with it on a very small level when we come right back on Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Program. Financial domestic violence, that's what we're talking about here today. I'm Arif Halaby, that's Jeff Gerard, on your place for news, talk, and information. This is your hometown station, KHTS. Welcome back to the show, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Arif Halaby, Jeff Gerard. All right, we're giving you some ideas on, buying and leasing a car. There's 5 things. We're going to recap those real quick in case you just joined us. 5 things to help you prevent yourself, or even if you're in the middle of a domestic violence situation, financial abuse, financial domestic violence components are real. And I think you almost can't have one without the other, because the way power is obtained in a domestic violence situation is through intimidation, is through putting you down. Oh, you're not that smart. Oh, you're so dumb. Oh, I can't believe that. I have another friend who's very successful in the financial world, in our industry, and her husband puts her down all the time, and he goes through this whole process. Even though she's in the financial world, she doesn't have the control over the financial assets. He does.
Wow.
And every time she starts to make more money or she does well, he puts her down and says things. And I'm like, you got to be kidding. And she does very well financially, but the dollars, she's not allowed to touch them. They go into the joint account with just his name on it. And
oh,
yeah, and you think of this and you go, well, oh, that person is good looking, or that person is smart, or that person is funny, or that person drives a nice car. They must be doing fine. Folks, nothing has anything to do with that. Your financial life has nothing to do with those things. It has to do with the knowledge and the confidence and the self-worth. Forget about the baloney of self-esteem. That was a phony thing we've tried for 30 years, and we've got prisons filled with people who have self-esteem. They have zero self-worth, maybe. So we focus on everybody thinks they deserve a trophy. Everybody's good enough to steal your wallet. Everybody believes they deserved what you have in your house, so they break in. That's self-esteem. Whether you think it's supposed to be or not, it's different. Give a lady self-worth. Give the victim self-worth. And through the power of knowledge, through the power of understanding these things, do you buy or lease a car? I don't know. It's up to you. It depends on a lot of situations. One is not bad always, and one is not good always. But how do you do it? And what's the difference? That's knowledge that needs to be very clear so that you have the power for that transportation. When we took the Boy Scouts up to San Francisco, we did what's called an urban camping trip. I'd never heard of that, right? And my boys were in the troop. And we went up there, and we took all different forms of transportation. We took a train up there, Amtrak. We took a bus. We took a private van. We took the cable car. And we took a ferry. And then we walked. And the boys had to learn how, and the BART system. They had to learn to go buy a ticket at the transportation hub. They had to learn how to board a bus and pay for the thing. Now, you might think that's silly and that's easy, but not if you're in Santa Clarita. If you're in Santa Clarita, it's not likely that you take a bus very often or have to, especially today with these ride sharing. So how do you do it? What if you need to? So those things are very important. Well, ladies, you have to learn the same thing. How do you buy and lease a car? How do you, if you're in a city situation, catch the transportation that is most convenient and accessible to you? And what is the paperwork? And how do you get a loan? Those are important things. And the last one, let me recap because I want Jeff to finish the last one here. We talked about the insurances. You need to understand about insurance. That helps you be free because, believe it or not having insurance in some situations is illegal. So you've got to stay in accordance with the law. Car insurance, life insurance, homeowners insurance, health insurance. These things, some of them are required by law. Some of them are great for you to have. Some of them you don't need. Learn the differences and what the ins and outs are. Second, we talked about safe money. This is money that's accessible in some cases, that's never going to go backwards in other cases, that gives you the sense of freedom and comfort regardless of the economic world. So that's CDs, savings accounts, checking accounts, annuities, things that are protected, no fees, no risk. That's my favorite part of it. And Jeff covered retirement accounts.
Well, and that's an important part too. We talked about that. It's got to be something that you add into the equation because that's the part where you're paying yourself for your efforts, right? Because money is the measure of our efforts. And if we're not going to store some of that for a later period, then we're just setting ourselves up for disaster. So you have to have that built in. If you have a workplace retirement account like a 401k, a 403b, deferred compensation, put some money into that. That's your job to put the money in. If your employer matches it, great. If not, still put the money in. Focus on the contribution, not the rate of return, not the match. Focus on your habit of putting money in. If you have some extra money or you don't have that at work, go into an individual retirement account. No one says you can't save for retirement just because you don't have a 401k at work. You can do that. Some companies still have a pension. If you work for a governmental agency or some of the other private companies out there, which is a very small percentage, they still do offer pensions in some cases. You might also hear it as a defined benefit plan. You say, I don't have a pension, I have a defined benefit. Great, no problem. You don't really put money into that. Your employer handles that. It's part of your compensation. You don't get it and get to tell them how much to put in. They're going to take care of that for you. But remember, there are a couple moving parts with that. So you don't just close your eyes, right? That's coming from your compensation. So you're less that money that you can spend so that they can pay you at a later date. So basically it just means that when you stop working and trading your time for money, the pension kicks in and gives you monthly checks every single month. So there's a couple pieces there you have to worry about too. Beneficiaries, that's a big part of it, right? So if you have somebody counting on you, let's say, and we're talking about this being locked out of someone's financial life. If you have a spouse that's going to take 100% of that pension, and if they pass away, there's nothing left over, what does that do for you? Did you have life insurance to replace that income? Or did they say, look, we're going to make this decision together to take a little bit less than we would normally, but if I pass away, the rest goes to you and you can sustain your lifestyle. Those are big decisions, and once you make them, they're irrevocable when you retire. So that's another important part. So it's important.
And you don't want to be locked out of that, right? You don't want to be the person who gets locked out of that. And then I just covered buying a car versus leasing a car, and when you should do one or the other, and how and what the process is. Jeff, what is our fifth component that needs to be understood to help prevent domestic violence, financial abuse?
Well, it's one of the three main parts, right? We always talk about food, clothing, and shelter, right? So you have to have some place to live. So do you buy a house or do you rent an apartment? You know, whether it's the decision while you're with somebody and you're making those decisions to help better your lifestyle, or you've separated from someone, or you're going through the process of separating, or you're on the other side of it. It doesn't matter. You still have to have a place to live, right? So buying a house may not be the first thing that you want to do. You may want to rent an apartment to buy yourself some freedom. Some people will say, oh, renting an apartment, that's just throwing money away. Well, what incredible freedom to not be married to that property. In 6 or 12 months or 2 years from now, you have a lifestyle now that has changed and you're in a better place. Now you can decide if you want to continue living there or go buy a house on your own. Renting has some amazing qualities to it, so please don't discount that.
No, and that gives you the freedom to know that you have the choice to move out.
Yeah.
The freedom that you know you have the choice to leave the abuser in that situation, and feel comfortable about asking others for help. Often an abuser's process is saying that everybody else is dumb, your sister, your mom. Isolate yourself from those people. You can only trust me. And that is a clear track for you to see that there's something going on somewhere. There's a problem somewhere. And let this person go out and find somebody else as a victim and not you. Better yet, tell the authorities. If they've committed a crime, you need to protect yourself and other people out there. And if, God forbid, but you happen to have had a child with this person, you need to protect that child. Because who else? Do not expect the police, district attorneys, judges, friends or family to protect that child any more than you will. It is your child. God gave them to you to protect. You have to do what you can do to save and protect them from injury and from harm. And if that means you have to leave and start over, it's what you have to do. But get your feet wet with this knowledge. Find help. PurplePurse.com is that website I had mentioned to you that's Allstate put out, Allstate Insurance, supported by Serena Williams. It used to be, from Scandal. The lady from Scandal was the ambassador prior. Yes, one more time? Kerry Washington. So Kerry Washington was, I think they just, she stepped down after her term was up, and so now it's Serena Williams. So Kerry Washington was involved with it. So if you think back, I remember seeing some commercials, that's the same issue. Okay, Jeff, tell me part of this thing that we've got to look at. What would be the first step if you're a domestic violence survivor, if you're somebody that's trying to take those steps to keep yourself from being into trouble?
Well, the next step, I mean, you've already gone through quite a bit of duress, I'm sure, coming out on the other side of a relationship like this. But you have to take basically a financial inventory. What do I have as part of my financial life? What resources do I have? Whether you have a job, okay, great. If you don't have a job, are you able to access any of the community property in your relationship? We've talked about someone that may have been attempting to lock you out of that situation, but you may be able to approach the financial institutions, whether it's a bank, a credit union, the company that was holding retirement accounts. There are a number of places you can go, but those are probably the closest to you, and you can walk into those institutions and identify yourself and say, hey, do I have any money in any accounts with my name on it? You know, that could be the first place. If you're locked out, look, you'll get when you see a teller or a personal banker and they're looking at the account and maybe they'll be able to tell if there's something going on, because normally people don't walk in off the street and ask if they have any money in their account, right? So there may be a little bit of a story that they're trying to tell you without being able to tell you legally if you're not on the account. But do some prying, and you can also look for statements if you have access to the mail. Anything where you can see that there's community property, you probably have access to it directly or indirectly.
You know, one of the things that we have seen is often banks would open up an account for you, right? You say, you know, I'm no longer on my ex-husband or my ex-wife's account. I want my own bank account. Say, no problem. So you open up another account at that same institution. Here's the challenge, and that I've seen occur in the past. The other spouse will come in and say, oh, I'm supposed to be on that account. And the tellers have put the new husband on the account. Oh, yeah, both accounts are supposed to be joint accounts. And I have seen them do that, and now all of a sudden the wife is getting her check direct deposited, or the ex-wife, or they've been separated for a while, and yet he now is back on it and has access to move the money out. So when it comes time to reestablish your financial banking institution, go to a separate bank or credit union that is not related, and where this person doesn't have any idea that you have an account, and you make sure that they understand that they are not to allow anybody else on that account. And it is now your bank account, and you have to reestablish. Bank managers especially, ask them for a few minutes. Can I speak to the bank manager? And you tell them a little bit of your story. You don't have to get into all the details necessarily, but enough to say, listen, I'm leaving a domestic violence issue with my spouse, and it's time for me to now go out on my own financially. Can you explain to me a little bit the difference between a checking and a savings account? Now, in your mind, you're thinking, a 48-year-old woman, I'm going to feel stupid by asking that. Okay, fine, get over it. Next. It's nice that you feel that way. Okay, great. I mean, okay, yeah. Who cares? You still have to learn what the difference between a checking and a savings, between a credit union and a bank, between a national bank and a state bank. If those things matter, if that applies to you, you ask those people that know. So what if you have to feel like you feel stupid? All right, next. Feel like it. Yeah, okay, you feel like it, and move on. You follow me? I mean, it's nice that you feel that way. Everybody will go, oh, you feel that way. But get over it. What's the difference between an IRA and a Roth IRA? Ask. Go online. If you don't have access, then you can go to the public library. Every public library in town has some sort of computer access, internet access. You can go in for free and get a public library card.
Yep.
You can now go in, even if this guy took away your phone, and you can take away information and knowledge that you can receive directly from those free computers. If you need help, you have to ask. If it's just you and you've chosen a life to be like that, then that's your life. I don't feel that sorry for you, because you're an adult and you can make decisions. But if you have a young person, a child in your life, or many children in your life, and you are in a situation like that, I love you, and I'm going to sound insensitive, but I don't really care about your feelings anymore. You have to protect those kids. You've made your choices. Those kids are stuck with you. They didn't make any choices to be your mom and dad, to have you as their mom and dad, right? So you now are given a command, in my opinion, by God, who has told you you've got to take care of those young people. If you have a domestic violence situation, you have to protect them. So you have to get over your feelings, get over the sickness that you feel in your gut when you are uncomfortable about a situation, and you've got to protect them, all right? Because nobody else is going to. And ask for help. There are lots of people that will help you. Police, maybe, maybe not. They're busy and they've got big things on their mind. If there's a crime, certainly. But there's the Domestic Violence Center right here in Santa Clarita. There are resources through your kid's school, PTA, counselors. There are resources right here through the senior center if you happen to be a little older and you're dealing with domestic violence. There are resources everywhere. So do your best to protect you and your family. And financial abuse can take many different forms. A person never has to raise their hand to still abuse you. So protect yourself so that you know what happens, because one of you is going to die first. And I don't want you to be the one left without any knowledge. And Jeff, that's a great story. or grandma only thought that there was money in the account if there were checks left.
Yeah, and that's the reality for some people is they have this false sense of knowledge that something is finite or something is a certain way that it is because they've been told that or no one educated them otherwise or they didn't take the initiative to do that on their own. It's all about, in my opinion, getting involved early on. Look, we don't live in the dark ages anymore, right? We don't live in a place where, you know, a spouse could really take over that control and keep somebody in the dark. There's too much information abound. But if you ignore it on purpose or if you neglect to learn some of it, at least a baseline foundation, that's where I think you're setting yourself up for trouble. So stay informed. That's the biggest deal. And remember that there are places you can go for help. Don't let the paralysis set in and not ask for it.
We're here to help, folks. You can always go to hometownstation.com, click on Total Financial Solutions, and send me a private email. If you have a problem, we'll give you those resources. You don't even have to remember anything else except hometownstation.com or KHTS radio. And we'll do our best to see if we can get you in the right direction. And if we have to, we'll even help make some of those phone calls for you. Thanks for listening. I'm Arif Halaby, and that's Jeff Gerard. On your place for news, talk, and information, this is your hometown station, KHTS.